Good morning, Monday, April 21st. And welcome to Collision Coffee Talk. It's not coffee today, it is tea. I don't know if it's allergies or what. I'm not feeling the greatest. Long weekend, another weekend of football. And so we're back and a big day ahead. So I think I've talked about it a lot online. We're moving out of the building. So we've been there for 13, 14 years. I'm losing track. But going to be moving out of that building, hopefully get most of everything out by the end of the month. I'm going to take a pause until the youngest child actually goes off to college in January. And then I may build actually my dream shop / training center. But anyway, we got to get a lot of stuff out. So Colette's showing up this morning, and we're going to start taking the Griffin, the X-Track, and some of the other things, start tearing those things down and getting them ready to transport back to Texas. As a hint for you, if you've wanted a Griffin or an X-Track, you have a chance to own my Griffin and my X-Track. So reach out to Bob or James or any of the guys at Colette and ask them what they're willing to sell those for. And I promise they're in great shape. We total everything. So, I mean, that works out really well, right? All right. I don't have a lot to talk about because I do have to get busy. I am a little embarrassed. So I got to do a little cleaning before Bob and the Select guys get there. So I'm trying to beat them by several hours into the office this morning, so that I can, it's like when people are going to come over and they call you and say, hey, no, I'm just around the corner. I'll be there in a minute. And you're doing that whole whirlwind thing where you're cleaning your house. Yeah, that's about to be me here in about an hour or so. So we're going to blow through some things today. Not a lot of events over the last week, really, in the industry. If the State Farm ADAS thing, I guess, was the most major news event that we had. But a few things that I want to talk about, and mostly I just want to complain because I think it's good for your soul. You just got to get that stuff out every now and then. And I don't think this industry complains. Well, no, let me take that back. We complain, we just don't do it the right way all the time. We hold back when we should complain, and then we kind of go somewhere and we complain privately to a small group of people. And then we wonder why nothing ever gets changed in this industry. So, it's what I'm here for. All right, we're going to talk about what happened in New Hampshire. What is proper refinish? This one pissed me off a whole lot, so get ready for that one. Should you keep a credit card on file? The post caused a bunch of people to send me questions. Volvo has picked Progressive. We're going to talk about writing an estimate specifically for Progressive and what that means. I will address the State Farm ADAS rollout. I think the most common question this week, and we got about 50 times of Ask Kristen, is ask Kristen what she thinks about the State Farm announcement. Then we're going to talk about total losses in the EPA. Now, some of that has to do with what came out of Oklahoma over the week, the progress on that bill that's really stupid, and then the kind of an ongoing thing of what's happening in California right now. So there is a few things to get off my chest this morning and go about. So let's just get to the first one. New Hampshire, the Department of Insurance issued a bulletin. Now, very rarely, if at all, does the Department of Insurance have any sort of action. So we talked about Washington State and that insurance commissioner wanting to have a bill passed that would give her a little bit more teeth. The Department of Insurance is limited on what they can and can't do, specifically when it comes to claims, how they can levy fines, and what they can and can't do for consumers. But occasionally the Department of Insurance will issue these bulletins, and basically they're ethical bulletins. There's not a lot of teeth to them per se, but it's just the Department of Insurance or the insurance commissioner telling insurance companies in that state, hey, this is what we expect of you in terms of behavior. We use one of these bulletins from Texas. It's from the 80s. So once there's a bulletin out there, it doesn't go away because the insurance commissioner changes. But basically, the state of Texas made a bulletin about, hey, you can't abandon salvage for a lot of reasons that had nothing to do with automobiles. But so we still use that bulletin pretty much in every DOI complaint when an insurance company goes, oh, I don't like your fees and I'm just going to abandon the salvage. So the insurance department in New Hampshire issued a bulletin that basically says, hey, We understand that virtual estimates and apps and all of these things help process claims. New Hampshire, Vermont, Connecticut, those are places where most insurance companies didn't keep a large claims force presence. I remember State Farm entered the Connecticut arena right as I was leaving, and we sent a guy up there, and but there's never been a large claims presence in those really far north eastern states. So we were always exploring some alternative claim settlement methods up there. But it says, hey, we get this. We know that it improves efficiencies. We know that it is also a cost effectiveness, less staff, less full FTE benefits, all those kind of things. But that you really should give a physical inspection. If the customer asks for it, if there is a discrepancy on what it's going to take to fix the car, there should be a physical inspection. Now, the reason I wanted to talk about this is I don't think we need the Department of Insurance bulletins on this from every DOI in the country, because this has always been the case. This isn't new. When I started handling claims, we go back 1995. There was a Polaroid in every agent's office, and we had a lot of rural territories, specifically Arkansas, Tennessee, Mississippi, Louisiana, etc. We couldn't send an adjuster or an estimator to everywhere all the time. So those those agents would take pictures and they would mail them into the claims office, and they'd mail those pictures in with a couple of estimates, and we do our best to try to figure out a way to pay the claim without putting somebody in a car and burning a tank of gas to go to the middle of, somewhere Arkansas. But we always knew that if there was a discrepancy, in other words, there was a disagreement between the insurer, us, and like the repairer and or the customer, I needed a physical inspection before I said no. The last thing in the world I needed to do was to draw a line in the sand and potentially head to court without someone really and truthfully laying their eyes on a vehicle. That still holds true to this day. I think a lot of times what you run into right now are untrained adjusters that don't understand that. And they're told that they have these three ways of handling, of processing the claim. I don't say handling the claim, of processing the claim. And they don't know how to think outside of those three because that's all they've been given the authority to do. So I often hear adjusters go, we can't handle your claim unless your shop sends their estimate through this system. That's not true either. I can't refuse to adjust a loss because the body shop doesn't want to do something that I want them to do. So I like this. I mean, it's great. It's reassuring. It has nothing to really do. I mean, I guess it helps body shops, sure. But more importantly, it helps consumers. But bottom line is this always has existed. I don't think it's gone away. I don't think the courts would change their mind. And in some cases, if you have an insurer that's refusing a physical inspection of the vehicle, that's probably the fastest way to win or look favorable, specifically like in a small claims court case or whatever. But just know that you don't, when an insurance company tells you we don't have to inspect the car, which I'm hearing a lot lately, that's not necessarily true. And we don't necessarily need a Department of Insurance bulletin to reinforce that. It's kind of sad that New Hampshire felt they had to say that. I think that's more of a testament to where claims has gone. I get more and more calls lately from people, peers that retired, that were kind of doing some peripheral consulting. And they'll be like, you're not going to believe what I just heard about claims. And I'll be like, yep, I'll probably believe anything right about now. And it's just lack of training. And when people don't have training, they're trying to do the best they can with what they have. And that doesn't always mean that that's a good thing. So if you are hearing people tell you more and more, they're not going to inspect the car, the customer can't do anything other than a virtual appraisal, there are some things to do. There's some processes to go through. So far, I've had great luck. As soon as it gets to the right person, they kind of go, yeah, that's a fair and reasonable request. Specifically when we look at the unfair, which is mentioned in this article, what the Unfair Claims Practices Acts were intended to do and why they have them, and what kind of we have a national guideline for that with our National Association of Insurance Commissioners, and so there's some things to do. So kudos sort of to New Hampshire. It's kind of like OEM position statements to me. It's just sad we had to do it. It's sad an OE has to put out a position statement. We're supposed to know those things. Those aren't positive things for the industry. That usually is like dad getting you in trouble and telling you you're not doing a good job. All right, let's talk about this one, because man, did this one piss me off. Okay. This one started in another place and another time, and ended up on my desk because of something that happened. And I looked at this picture and went, "You got to be kidding me that this got posted from what should be an organization or an association or whatever that speaks for proper ways of doing things." And so it ended up sparking a discussion in the back channels, because several paint companies and paint reps and whatever were asked to give an opinion. And of course, they immediately found everything that was wrong with this picture. And so I kind of chuckled. And then I posted it up. And all I wanted to do is I wanted people to say, what's wrong? Anything wrong with this picture? Anything you would change? Yes or no? No, I guess slanting the conversation in one way or the other. And a lot of people picked up on what was wrong with the picture and things that needed to be changed. But of all places on LinkedIn, the conversation got a little bit different, and it reminded me of what plagues our industry. So I always talk about what's wrong with the industry and why can't we seem to fix things, right? Like if we all are just sitting around a table or a golf course and we put on our sports coats and our free drink tickets, we've all got kind of a good grasp of what's wrong. And that grasp hasn't changed for the last 30 years, but we're not making any progress in why. And this picture was a great example of it, because on LinkedIn, people started asking questions like, well, who was the insurer? And what did the customer want? And if we had painted it another way, well, it may have totaled the car. And I thought, okay, there was an incident with a paint company about 4 years ago. And that they had a person that was OE relations, I think was their title. And they also then kind of got the side job or side title would be an insurer relations. And they had gone to State Farm and given a presentation, and State Farm immediately sent me the slides and went, "Hey, you're not going to guess what so-and-so from such and such paint company was up here telling us." And it made me angry. And this is basically what it was. So in other words, what people were saying on LinkedIn is that depending on price, or depending on what an insurer tells you, or depending on what a customer wants, or depending on what type of car it is, or whatever excuse is, that could be proper. And that's just not the case. And I think that's what confuses everybody, because if we can't agree on what proper refinishing is, then we have a very hard time agreeing on what proper repair is. Now, there's a big difference between proper and market standard. And so here's where the paint company and I got into it several years ago. They had gone to State Farm and given a presentation on what is a panel's edge. So in other words, let's discuss this unicide refinish phenomenon that was kind of, the industry finally kind of took that one. Social media had given it some legs. People were posting it. You had people using the hashtag Unicide Life. I mean, like, it was picking up some steam. So of course, what does our paint company do? They march right up to an insurance company and go, no, you don't have to do that. So what was interesting is the paint company basically said that it was market standard. In other words, it was standard that DRP shops, recyclers, and sometimes in warranty repair, always used foam edge masking tape, back taping of jams, whatever. That was what they did. Now, they wouldn't go as far as to say that's what we'll warranty, which is where I got mad at them. I'm like, okay, well, what's your warranty say? Well, that's not relevant. We weren't asked about our warranty. We were asked to talk about what the market does. So there's proper and there's market, and those shouldn't be two different things, but I love those cameras, but they are sometimes, unfortunately, two very different things. So proper refinish is proper refinish. I don't need to know anything else about whose car it was, what the customer asked for, whether it was close to total loss, nothing. These are the methods in which we properly refinish a car. very similar to these are the methods in which we properly would put on a quarter panel, or we'd weld in a frame rail, or we'd, do whatever. Now, someone can decide to deviate for whatever reason or excuse they want to give. I was told to do it by DRP. The customer didn't have any money. We were afraid the car was going to total. Those are all reasons or excuses for why the proper thing wasn't done. But right is right and wrong is wrong. I don't necessarily have a problem with some variations, right? I don't have a problem with foam edge masking tape. I don't whatever. But proper is proper, and then there's everything else. And right is right, and then there's everything else. And this industry has allowed for so long for so many excuse variables. Well, the DRP, or well, we don't want the car to total, or well, I don't think whatever, to change what is good. Now, like I said, you make whatever decision you want as long as you communicate that decision to the customer, and it's the customer's choice and not yours. But right is right and wrong is wrong. And I think when we can't even agree what proper is, or you have a bunch of really smart people who suddenly jump on a conversation and start talking about, well, I need to know so much more. We don't have enough from this picture to really make a decision. If we can fix that, if we can figure out how to let everyone know, even our own industry. So it's not like I don't need to worry about educating insurers right now, because we can't even agree within our own industry, right? If a paint company is going to say this is a method of which proper refinish is done, this is what a panel's edge is, and this is what would warranty a lifetime warranty or whatever, then that's the proper refinish method. Market standard may be not to follow the proper refinish methods, but market standard may not be what I owe. And that's one of the things that we used to talk about a lot in the insurance industry, that I don't think they're having those conversations anymore. We would have somebody come in and go, well, that's not how they're doing it in the market. Like, we've been in and out of body shops and this is what they're doing. And then you'd have some people sitting at corporate going, we don't want to pay what the market is doing. That's not what we owe. We owe proper repair. We owe whatever. If the customer elects not to do that, or the shop elects not to do that, that's not our circus, not our monkey. We're not liable for that. But we owe what proper is. And I think now we've all gotten off of that, and everybody's just trying to have a discussion around what's the market. In other words, and we have a lot of insurers that really feel like they only owe what the market is doing, that they don't necessarily owe everything, right? Like, they don't know everything that needs to be done to the car. They just owe up to the lowest level of a market standard. And that causes a lot of confusion. We talk about, how do we have all these bad repairs? Like, I'll go into a shop and to us, it looks like the car's just completely butchered. But some tech was proud of that, and they delivered it. It's not like they were like, oh God, I really screwed up that car. I hope nobody ever looks at it. They had no idea. And if we don't establish what good should look like, and we don't hold that industry standard by everyone in it. So if you're in a position of leadership or whatever, stop making excuses for customers or for companies you make money off of. Like, let's just put it that way. I'm well aware that there's a lot of people that are going to not take doors off, not going to paint unisides, they're going to burn in clear. I'm well aware there's a lot of people that are going to do that. I'm not going to make excuses for that or try to make them feel good about themselves for doing it. We've got to keep a high standard for what good looks like. And if we don't, then we can't expect the insurers to do that either. So if we can't make a decision, why do insurers want to burn clear? Why do insurers not want to go to a panel's edge? Why do they want to tank paint deductions on every panel? Because we're teaching them that. They're not teaching themselves that. They're learning that from us. So what's the old saying? When you know better, do better. So let's all start doing better. Okay, let's go back and talk about Progressive a little bit more. So I'm going to keep showing this letter from this local body shop here in Arkansas, from their law firm. So this post on the left got posted up online, and it was from a body shop. It says, hey, if you're a Progressive customer, no body shop can write your estimate. You need to call and file a claim and set up a date to drop off the vehicle for the adjuster to come in the shop and write it. And I went, kind of cringed. And then, I started thinking about the case on the right-hand side and what's going on with there. And so those things happen a lot, specifically around Progressive. An insurance company that has a policy that says for processing claims and determining what we're going to pay for indemnification, we're going to write our own estimate. That has nothing to do with a body shop, whether you are a DRP or you are a non-DRP. Particularly if you have a state and you're in a state that has a state law that says the shop is required to produce an estimate for parts, labor, etc. Now, some attorneys have said, well, we just gave you Progressive's estimate. So that's what we submitted. So when you do that, that's you as the shop going, this is what's required to repair your vehicle. There are some issues with that. And I tell every shop that tells me, Kristen, we don't write estimates on Progressive cars. Okay, do you want to go to court and testify to Progressive's estimate? In other words, I've met some great people over the last year that are brand new Progressive adjusters. They were doing different things before this job. They're not bad people. They didn't get a whole lot of training before they went into the field. And now they're out there making decisions. Is that who should be deciding how a vehicle is fixed and what will be done and what will be paid for? Well, if you're a shop and you're not writing an estimate, that's what you're saying. Whatever, we do only what Progressive says to do. They're in charge, right? Just kind of like this post. A shop can't write your estimate. Yes, I can. And I think we all have probably hundreds, thousands of shops that work with Progressive that write their own estimates on everything they do. Now, Progressive can say, we're only going to pay off ours. Sure, that's indemnification. And as a body shop, not my circus, not my monkey, right? Whatever the insurer and the customer have going on doesn't really have a whole lot to do with what I've got going on over here. But be very careful about legal requirements within your state. So if your state has a law that says you have to write an estimate, it has to have the mileage, it has to have license plate number, it must identify, whatever your state laws are. Some people have really detailed laws. Some states don't have anything. Some states have very, broad laws. Florida has some pretty broad laws, but don't let an insurer's process for how they handle claims change what you do as a collision repair shop. Like, you have your own laws and your own rules and your own things that you have to do. The insurer is their own island over there. Don't get caught up, because you get a situation where there's a bad repair, OE procedures weren't followed, the customer's complaining about the repair, and if we're going to go to court and the shop has no independent estimate, then we're basically now going to just be asking, why did you listen to Progressive? You were trained. You're OE certified. You're whatever, you're bragging that you're iCar Gold and all these things. Explain how you went along with this. So just a side note there. I thought it was interesting that popped up. So never let an insurer's, I'm going to keep saying it, never let an insurer's claims process dictate or change how you treat a consumer and what you do or don't do when it comes to assessing damage and advising the customer on what it takes to repair the vehicle correctly. That's your job. You don't necessarily, I always tell people, customer can pay you to put a fish tank in the steering wheel if they want to. It's not super safe, but it's their choice once they've been properly advised. That's your role. It's not your role just sit there and go, we do whatever the insurance company tells us to do. Because I promise you, the insurance company is going to come in there and go, well, if that wasn't what was supposed to have been done to the car, if there was something else that needed to happen, the shop should have, and they're going to chunk you right back under the bus. I had one of these cases actually in Florida not too long ago, and that's exactly what the manager and the adjuster did, and the shop was just going, what? I thought under the DRP we weren't supposed to do nothing, and they got stuck with the whole thing. All right. State Farm. It seems like every broadcast, every episode, we're on episode 31 of Collision Coffee Talk, and it seems like every one of them, there's something from State Farm or some update or something to talk about. So let's talk about the ADAS thing. All right. You can go back to last year when the first initial pilot rolled out, and I told you guys this was going to go nationwide. They have added they added some more highly trafficked states to the last increase. We talked about that phase 2. And then we are right on track, if you do your math, to national rollout. So national rollout for State Farm and their agreement with Opus for their ADAS mapping program has been announced that it will roll nationally. And I think it'll be basically probably between now and August before it is officially everywhere. And they'll roll it out in phases. Okay, let me just break this down because I was giving a speech last week in Kansas City and everybody had a lot of questions. So we'll just answer this one. All right, the agreement is for ADAS map only. It is not requiring you to buy their tool, and it is not requiring you to use them for scans, calibrations, whatever. It is the map tool. So very similar to, like, I think ADAS Find, Rev. There's a couple of different engines out there that you put the vehicle in your estimate, and it says, hey, these are the calibrations that we think needs to be done to the car. Nothing is 100% accurate. Everybody goes, I'm finding errors with it. Well, no shit, right? Like, I can find errors with Repair Logic, and anything that's an AI generated engine is never going to be perfect. If we can get to that phase, that would be awesome. But right now, it's just nothing's perfect. So you can use the tool. Doesn't mean it's going to be perfect. But why are we here? We are here because the overwhelming 80 percentile majority of the DRPs on their program were not doing calibrations. They weren't even doing scans. So if we look at CCC's data and what they reported, a large majority of direct repairs on the State Farm program, I'm still going to call it Service First, I can't help it, we're not doing the basics. It's 2025, for Christ's sake, right? Like, and this was 2024 when this first started. That's pretty scary for an insurer. So we go back and we talk about, what I used to say, we would sit in corporate and go, hey, we don't owe the market standard. We owe to do the right thing. Well, if I'm an insurer and I know, because I'm being handed a statistic from a software provider, that the people that I've entrusted with my customers under a direct repair situation, and we're going to warranty, and they don't even warranty anymore. If you read the fine print, there's no lifetime warranty on that. But we're going to do, we know these people, overwhelming majority, aren't doing the things that we know. Here's the average age of the fleet. In other words, the average age of what's insured. Here's the average age of what goes into the DRP as a repairable, not total loss, but here's what's in, and then here is how small based on those repairables, probably 100% of those vehicles needed some sort of calibration to be done to them. It's really hard not to have anything, whether it's static, dynamic, or whatever. So they said, look, we got to come up with something to make the shops at least think about it. We're here because the overwhelming majority of your peers, now remember, this only applies if you're a State Farm DRP. So I'm talking to you DRPs. The overwhelming majority of your peers were doing so bad that dad had to come in and put a new rule in place, and he's making you pay for it. So everybody's like, we have to pay $3 and we can't charge the customer. You're right. Because an overwhelming majority of you were not doing the right thing. So dad has to make a rule. In other words, we're all grounded right now and everyone's going to use this tool. There were a lot of tools in the mix. This is the one they settled on based on price and testing, etc. I don't blame them. So everybody goes, what do you think of it? I go, if I was still sitting in corporate, I would have done this. I would have done more, and I would have done it sooner than this. But I agree, from an insurer perspective, trying to have some sort of dominion control over your DRP program and basic necessities of repair safety for customers, they had to do something. So they did that. And so that's the ADAS mapping feature. Now, when everybody's saying ADAS, and Opus and State Farm set pricing, Opus does not set pricing. So I've been back and forth with their people on it. The main guy that I always worked with at Opus is no longer there. He now works for our team. So he's over here on this side, so to speak. But I still talk to the Opus people. I still think good things of them. They sold their mapping tool. That's what they did. They were not involved in pricing. However, there were companies involved in pricing, and that's ProTech, I think, um, a company, I believe they were out of Chicago at first, but they're another kind of a really good large regional carrier, Elite Tech, a bunch of different people got together and came up with pricing. Now that's mentioned in this rollout, and it makes it feel like that we have to do this. But what they did is they came up with some pricing guidelines. They put that into CCC under those 21 bucket kind of things that CCC likes to talk about. So basically, you go to the mapping program, it tells you what calibrations are needed. You go and you enter those calibrations on the estimate using your parts code table, and there should be a reference price there. Now, State Farm's position is it's a reference price. There may be times when the pricing needs to be adjusted. That's our get out of jail free card as a insurer. We basically go, this is just a guide, but there can be case by case basis when those things need to be readjusted or reconsidered. The problem with that is that the people that are frontline making the decisions don't know, they don't have a decision tree or a background of training on when to make those changes and determinations. And when that happens, people just go no and default to whatever the basic price is. And so I understand what State Farm's corporate messaging is, but that's not how it's probably going to get implemented in the field. And many of you are going to try to make a case for why that pricing doesn't work on this car, and it's going to be a whole ordeal. It is. But it's a DRP program and you signed up for it. The other problem of that for us non-DRPs is that pricing will probably bleed over into our lives, and we'll probably spend more time saying no than the DRP shops will. As things continue to evolve, whether it's drop in the labor rates, whether it's more direction of pricing and vendors or whatever, it's just going to get harder for you to stay on a DRP. There's no more... There doesn't seem to be a feeling where the profitability of the DRP is even a consideration anymore. It's more of a loss cost adjustment initiative on the insurer side, where the focus is all about cutting expenses more than it is about ensuring a healthy ecosystem of repair. I don't know how much further into 2025 or into 2026 most people can stay on a DRP. That said, you can't just cut them cold. For those of you that are on them, I get it. You can't just cut them cold turkey. They're a part of your life. Some of you you've never hunted for your customers. They've always just kind of come to you. And so the thought of not being on a DRP creates a lot of anxiety. But now's the time to start thinking about that. You need to probably get a good handle on your business. Of the DRPs that you're on, what percentage each month do they represent of your revenue? Are there ones that you could go ahead and turn off and start learning to hunt when it's less painful as you work toward maybe replacing some business? There's a story of several years ago, a body shop in the Northeast, Bob McSherry, and he just one day came and turned them all off at the same time. And he did great, and he navigated through it. There was some ups and downs. Not everybody is made out of the same stuff that Bob is. And so I totally get why some people want to take it slow. But just evaluate that and stay on top of it and know what your profit percentage are for each of those. If you're only making 3% on Allstate DRP or Progressive or whatever, that probably isn't sustainable. You got to let them go. So figure out where you are on the profit needle with each of those insurers. Don't work yourself broke. Don't get caught off guard. Don't put yourself in a bad situation, because here's the other thing that's coming, and I've started to see people post it. In 2007 and 2008, when we got to a recession, people don't fix their cars much. They have claims, they get paid, they keep the money, they need it for groceries and medical bills and all kinds of things. So we have that going on in a recession. When you couple that now with a lower volume of claims, there's a contraction going on in the market, and you see people posting it. Hey, we're not busy. We don't have that many cars. There was a guy that posted this week about, oh, let me tell you how slow it is. And he took a picture of the parts room, and all of us were like, God damn, how many aftermarket parts in one picture can you have? But the guy was just basically trying to say it's slow. All right, so here's what happens. the national contracts or our larger DRPs are built on a volume model. In other words, we know from corporate that we need to ensure for our profitability that a certain volume of repairables keeps going through those large national accounts. We've cut very large enterprise deals with them. To facilitate that, when the repair count goes low, we remove shops from the DRP program. So I remember 2007, 2008, I'm getting calls from shops going, Kristen, we just got called. We're getting kicked off the State Farm program. You were there when you put us on. It's been 20 something years. I mean, what can we do? Is there anything? And the answer is no. If they decide that there's too many shops currently on the program for market buckets to the promises to be met, a lot of shops will get kicked off. So about a year ago, I used to say there's probably not a whole lot you could do to get removed from a DRP. And then right now you have people posting that they just got a call that they're going to be kicked off of so-and-so's DRP program. They're not going to be on it for next month or whatever. Shop had great customer service scores. They had great, KPIs, but hey man, you got to go. We got to make sure that we keep the customers when they're choosing the DRP program can't choose you. And so if they can't choose you, then we know that everything that was going to you is probably going to go to one of these national things that we're up against. So if DRP is very much important to you, it is very much part of your business plan, your revenue stream, whatever, and you are an independent repairer in a market that has a lot of nationals, really get a handle on your numbers and start planning now. Even if you never have to execute that plan, I would much rather you have it and never have to execute it than call me and go, oh my God, we just got kicked off of our largest insurer. They were 40% of our revenue. I don't know what I'm going to do and how I'm going to keep my employees and what I'm going to. That's tough because that gut wrenching feeling is then tough to make business plans and pivot and do some things. So start thinking about those things. All right. Let's talk about the Ask Kristen. So this one got posted on Collision Repair Technicians United and suddenly lit up my in tray and my text messaging. Should we do this, Kristen? So basically, one of the shops posted that they had an independent adjuster come through the shop that they had never dealt with before. And of course, like every independent adjuster, for like all of us somehow have 30 years in the industry, every independent adjuster somehow used to be a body shop owner. And we're like, wow, crazy. Never heard that story before. But this guy said they used to own a shop and that if they had to get back in the business right now, that the only thing, they wouldn't have them sign a direction to pay. And that they would have them require a credit card on file to cover all the short pays. Interesting. So this had everybody going, what should we do, Kristen? This is, what. So first of all, a direction to pay is nothing more than you hoping that you're going to get put on a check. But the insurance company never has to honor that anyway. So if you get a direction to pay signed or not signed, I don't care, right? That's an insurance company form that we need if you're on a DRP so that we can pay you without paying the customer and not get sued, because I lost a case like that in the late 90s when we paid the body shop directly under a DRP claim. And then the customer made us pay that claim again. So that one was kind of painful. Would I keep a credit card on file? God, no. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to possibly let the customer know that there's a short pay and they're possibly going to be legally responsible for it, et cetera. But there are legal issues to keeping a credit card on file. Every state now has these privacy laws, and then there's some banking laws. And so once you have somebody's credit card number in your care, custody, and control, there's a whole lot of things you have to do. And some of that requires like how you store and protect your internet and all of those things. And I don't want that. I am probably pretty easy to hack. I'm not a genius, and I don't want to spend thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars every month on whatever it would take to prevent me from being hackable. I don't keep credit cards. So if you buy something on the website, that's a third-party provider that we use. So people will call me and go, yeah. Can you just rerun my credit card? Nope. No, I'm sorry. I don't have it on file. If you signed up for our C20 group and you wanted to buy something else, we got to call you and we got to have you kind of rerun your credit card again. Cause I don't want the legal responsibility, one, of having that on file, and I would feel terrible if something happened to it. And then two, to meet the requirements of law for me to keep your credit card on file, that's a lot of money every month. And then that goes into my overhead and why when there are other ways that I can do that. So as a body shop, no, I would not keep a customer's credit card on file. If you're a dealership or you're a large MSO or whatever, you probably have really good internet protections and you're probably used to that kind of stuff. Might be easier for you, but for people like me, that's a no. We talk about, and if you take our negotiating training, we talk about there's this reptilian brain. It's like a little dinosaur that sits on the top of your brainstem, and it's your fear, fight, flight mechanism, and it's always on all the time. Part of what my job is to gain customer trust is to calm that down, right? Like I want to climb up the ladder of your brain, and I want to get out of that fear, fight, flight mode. So I want to calm it. I can't imagine that asking a customer up front to give you open access to their credit card would calm that part of their brain. I think it would cost you more than it would help you. And so my advice is no. And then third, why the hell are we taking advice from somebody who said they used to own a shop, obviously wasn't that successful, and now they're an IA? So there's that one too. Like clearly they don't make the best business decisions. So probably anything that they would offer for you as advice, we might not want to listen to. But no, I would not keep a credit card on file, right? Your best defense is a good contract. You want a signature on a good contract. And then you need to have regularly written communications, no phone calls, not text messages back and forth. You need to be sending emails and really documenting where you're at, what fees and what's currently owed, and what the customer gave you permission to do. They gave you permission to incur teardown. They gave you permission to write an estimate. They gave you permission to send that in, and that you're communicating what the current charges on the vehicle are. That is your best line of defense, not an old failed shop owner who's now an IA. Okay, I feel like Larry. Doesn't Larry say that all the time? Like, okay. Anyway, all right. In other news, right? I always hear shops say, "Oh my God, I'm so glad that we're OE certified because as soon as the OEs start having their own insurance, we're going to be able to repair cars with OE parts per the OE procedures, and everything's going to be okay." Well, here's an announcement from Volvo. Like many other OEs, it's not easy being an insurance company. And so most of them choose an existing insurance company to be like a TPA or a third-party administrator for their policies. And so Volvo has appointed Progressive. So for the Volvo insurance, it will be handled by Progressive and Progressive adjusters. It probably doesn't matter. I guess it'll be in some situations, it'll be an all OE policy in some. Some of these OE like what we learned when we were reading some of General Motors lately, does not necessarily mean all OE parts. But while it may give me OE parts, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be smooth sailing. You're still going to be dealing with the same people that you deal with on your regular claims, and they're still going to be like, we don't owe for that, and you don't need to do that, and all of these things. So OE policies are not our savior. It's not being the bright beacon of light that I think everyone was hoping that would be. And then Volvo, of all people, of all the TPAs out there, you could have selected Progressive, really. I have so many questions. Now, I do want you all to understand, this isn't a tower and has nothing to do with collision repair. So the collision repair people from Volvo that run their Volvo certified program are actually really cool, really great people. They had no say in this. They probably found out about it the same time the rest of us did when the press release went out. There was I think it was a couple of years ago. Stellantis FCA sent out a press release about they own aftermarket part and used part distributors. Very, very common, very prevalent over in Europe. And then they had brought that process to the United States and we're going to start promoting it. but they never bothered to tell the collision division, which had a position statement that said no aftermarket or used parts. And so the collision division of Stellantis, or FCA, found out about that press release on the same day that the rest of us found out that the OE was pushing used and aftermarket parts. So those collision guys, not a part of this. So if you're on Volvo's certified collision program and you know those people, or you've been to an event where they've spoken, don't send them nasty emails. There's like really nothing they can do about this. They probably wish they could, but there's nothing they can do about this at all. So really, yeah, just, yeah, they previously worked with Liberty. I guess maybe Progressive, is Progressive different, but maybe a step up from Liberty Mutual. I don't know. But this is when people ask me, well, I don't know why you're not a fan of OE certified repair programs, Kristen. You know, just wait. I always hear the twofold. One, just wait until first notice a loss is going to happen. I'm like, it's 2025. FNOL is easy. It's been there. We've had the capability for the last 15 years now, and the OE's never done it for a reason. It's not happening, and nor will it ever happen. And then number two, they're like, and then once the OE has their own insurance, we're going to be able to write all OE parts and all OE procedures. Yeah, pumpkin, that ain't happening either. So keep hope alive. I still, if it's not a restricted parts program, I'm just not sure that it's worth being on the OE. And the only reason I think that's worth it is because it limits what the insurance company can do to negotiate against you, unless you're Tesla. And then Tesla agrees with the insurer and starts adding all kinds of DRP shops to their program that have no business being Tesla certified, because they want to put competition in the marketplace. And now suddenly every Tesla is $65 an hour to repair. For that liability, yeah, no, I'm out. All right. Last thing I kind of want to talk about, not the last thing I want to talk about, but so there's a lot going on right now around total losses and laws. Just about every state has something kind of churning lately about trying to reduce the fees that body shops can charge around total losses, whether that's what's going on in California, the Oklahoma bill, that's just crazy. A couple of years ago, we had some changes to storage rates in Louisiana. We did and we didn't, right? Everybody kind of thinks the state police now kind of govern that. They really kind of don't. But the only way to prove that is court, and so very few people want to actually go do that. But we had a lot of changes around that, and the insurers are very, very active in wanting to get that done, because 46 to 47% of reported claims are going to become total losses, and they would like to churn up your resources and your property with those vehicles for as little money as possible. Now, there's a lot of things to think about. And so this video, I often pick on the Automotive Recyclers Association. They have a wonderful video that has since, I went looking for it this morning and I couldn't find it, but I didn't have a whole lot of time. But I'm thinking they've removed it because I've used it in a couple of cases. And so I think somebody went, oh, that's okay. Don't worry about it. I got it recorded. But of them, how they harvest parts from a vehicle and what that looks like. But they have this video up, and this was an automotive recycler that got an inspection from the EPA. Basically 5 different regulators, some of them being the EPA, showed up to do a site inspection. The video is it touches on a few things that you probably want to pay attention to. So if you want to go and pull this, go to YouTube, go to their channel, watch this video, you can. But what's interesting is the things that this recycler faces when we talk about watershed and runoff and all these things. As a body shop, every vehicle on the lot is subject to regulation. And I always say, if you are in a waterway area, so like you're in Houston, Texas, you're in Louisiana, you're in most of like the Pac Northwest, you're in Massachusetts, whatever. Those are pretty water prominent places, and there's runoff, and the whole state of Louisiana is almost below sea level. The EPA is very involved in what you're letting leak onto your parking lot. You need to be very aware of what your exposure is for having vehicles that are total losses on your property. I think we do a pretty good job when cars are in the shop with absorber or sweeping things up or controlling fluids, contaminants, whatever. But when a car rolls in on a total loss, we just let the tow truck driver take it to the back fence and drop it, and whatever it's been leaking the whole entire way on the flatbed, as soon as he hits tilt, it rolls straight into our yard. We're responsible for that. There's a reason the tow truck driver has a cleanup fee at the accident, and some of those are outrageous, right? We look at some of those at $700 to clean up an accident scene while they have to soak up all those fluids, and that's because you can't just leave all those fluids there. So I always get tickled at an insurance company that'll pay those on the tow bill, and then they get mad when we have them in the body shop. So think about what, I mean, I'd go listen to this video. There's a lot of others on there. You may want to reach out to your local EPA. People get nervous about calling the local EPA or the regional EPA people and going, yeah, Kristen, but as soon as I raise my hand, they're suddenly probably going to come and inspect me. Yeah, I'm sure there's a story out there of somebody that got inspected before that, but you can ask a lot of questions. I know California had the California Autobody Association for a long time had really good EPA connections, and they did lots of presentations. Ask your state association to kind of earn the money you're giving them and have them put together some sort of presentation on all of the things that you're required to do. Storage for historically for shops, we've had this one size fits all bill, right? And then an insurance company would call us and go, what are the charges? And we'd go, well, I got some administration fees, and I got storage, and I got a tow bill. But we put into that storage category, into that rate, so much of our exposure, our insurance, the health, regulations, safety, environmentalism, all the stuff we had to do. As this begins to break up, and more states start to try to look at storage rates or have caps on different things or whatever, it's going to be real important that you understand everything that goes into you having a vehicle in your care, custody, and control and being parked on your lot, specifically not indoors. There's a lot of people going, oh, well, we'll have special rates for indoors. Yeah, I'm not worried about that. It's the outdoor stuff that can get me in the most amount of trouble, because that's where it rains, right? So there's a lot of things out there that you're going to want to look into. Just make sure that you have a complete understanding. On this month's C20 class, so our insurance and customer relations class, I am doing an updated total loss presentation. We're going to talk a little bit more about this and fee structuring and all of those things. If you're not a member of our group, and total losses and fees and rates concern you, it's probably a great time to jump in. If you are in our group and you happen to be in the state of Oklahoma, there will be a session just for you. You must be a body shop in Oklahoma. I know I've had people going, hey, even if we're not an Oklahoma shop, can we get in on it? Just no. I just really want to talk and deal with the Oklahoma body shops right now. And I don't want you to hear something in that is addressed to Oklahoma that you suddenly start trying to apply in Texas or Minnesota or somewhere else, and it causes a whole lot of kerfuffles. So we're just going to be dealing with them. I am behind. So there was a post in the group the other day. All our C20 members have their own private little groups for group chats and whatever. Wanting to know when the meeting this month was going to be, and I kind of chuckled and went, hell, I'd like to know when the meeting this month is going to be. Between the flood and the cleanup and the moving and all that, I am behind, but that is a to-do on this week, is to figure out what day I'm going to have that on. It will be recorded. So all of our sessions, if you happen to miss them, that's fine. They'll be recorded, and you can always come back and watch those. We know that you can't always join us live. If you can, we love that. We'd love to have your participation, your questions when they come up. But you got lives and things happen, so we completely understand that. All right, last thing that we want to talk about. I got more questions of what's on the shelf. Everybody's like, you're going to pan over and show the alcohol more? Yep, sure will one day. I am not ashamed of the alcohol that is on my bookshelf. But for this week, what I thought I would talk about for what's on the shelf, I do a lot of reading, always have. That was kind of when you grow up where I grew up in Arkansas, and it was before video games, and we only had three TV stations or whatever. You do a lot of reading. And this book, during COVID, I recommended this book a lot. And I think we're going to kind of be this next year going through a lot of where we were sometimes in COVID, and a lot of where we were in 2007 and 2008. But it's called The One Thing. And it's a book just on how to simplify the way you think and approach things, and how that gets kind of extraordinary. You know, if you can do that, your results will ramp up. Kind of like where we talked about on the proper refinish thing. Um, Sometimes we overthink things for the wrong reasons. Sometimes you can overthink things for the right reasons, but sometimes we overthink them for the wrong reasons. Whether that's trying to make ourselves feel better about the things that we're doing that we know aren't exactly right. But we want to feel it's not my fault. I'm a good person, but the insurance company's making me do blah blah blah. So it's a great book. I think everyone should probably read it. It is available book on tape, so you can get it through Audible. If you happen to be Amazon and you buy enough stuff on Amazon like I do, you get little credits every month. And so you could probably read 3 or 4 books a month and never pay anything, or listen to 3 or 4 books a month and never pay anything. So great way, use of your time to and from work. Just put a book and tape in and kind of think differently. But I think all of us, um, it's no longer an option. Like we've been encouraging everybody for the last 5, 6 years to think about getting off commission, going more towards salary or hourly, to rethink staffing and how you have your shop set up, to all of these things, because we kind of knew this cliff was coming. Um, and here we are, and we started screaming about total losses being 46% of claims about 3 years ago. And what was that going to do when it affected your repairables? So we've got a little time, but the with every downfall in the economy, just go back throughout time. Some of the richest people in America made that money during a downturn. They positioned themselves when things turned down to be ready for when it turned up again, whether that's the Roosevelts, Carnegie, Vanderbilts, you know, there's people that were good at understanding what it means when a market's down. So read a book, start thinking about your thinking, thinking about your business, what you can control and what you can't control. You can't control insurers. You can't control consumers. There are things we can do that talk to each of those better, but I can't control those. So what can I control and what can I affect change on? And then go from there on those things. I will be in all week. I'm going to spend the next couple of days with the Select Boys tearing down some benches, putting them on a trailer, and watching them trailer those things back to Texas. If you need me, we'll be around. But as I always say, the smartest person on this team is Melanie. So if you need something quickly and correctly, you're always best to just email directly Melanie at Collision Hub, and she will be happy to help you with anything you need. And I will see you guys next Monday on Collision Coffee Talk. Thanks. Bye.